The Liberals, including the liberal woke school of thinking and associated allies, clap each other on the back and defend the immigration policy and the refugee policy of Ireland. I don't applaud it. Straight away you will stereotype me and castigate me, shut me down, maybe some of you even justify physical attacks on me, maybe worse. My problem is the survival of the fittest policy that is implemented by the state and supported and excused by many through the political spectrum. The refugees have no choice but to come here, or attempt to come here. We don't go to the refugees. The refugees who decide to journey here need physical abilities and tenacity, also mental dexterity and resoluteness, luck, money, selling their soul and sometimes their bodies. They come from violent and repressed cultures or areas, through the twilight zone of the underground refugee channels, the brutality of refugee camps and hostels, and chances are they will end up in similar circumstances here in Ireland, in this dog-eat-dog world that the refugee and the undocumented worker inhabits, and sadly, the kind and the innocent and the weak and the honest get abused and used and pushed to one side and crushed. The image I have in my head is also an allegory of the savage soldier of the sick ideology who lost the war in the refugee boat, pushing the genuine political refugee out of the same boat into the water of the drowned. Meanwhile, the women and children are left to rot in the refugee camp at the mercy of the depraved. And the depraved know they have the escape valve of refugee status awaiting them. The logic dictated with our refugee policy, and I am not too far off the mark, when given the example of an ISIS refugee, ISIS, landed in Ireland thanks to his Islamist network with its state backing and financial resources. That man with blood on his hands is free to wander around Ireland. He will have the best of legal advice to aid him. He will have all the politicians of all stripes defending his right to be here. The politicians will dispute this, but I look at actions, not words. I look at all actions, not a few heavily publicised examples that counteract my belief. I just smile. It's like defending those who are Nazi or sympathetic to the Nazis post-World War II as refugees into Ireland. Defending people who are psychopathically violent and unapologetic about it, misogynistic, who want an Ireland grip control of politics and culture. They want a society to bend to their whims and will have all the spurious justifications to try and bring others on board. Remember this, a handful of men caused consternation in Northern Ireland and the tie-up of British security forces. Again, a handful of men caused the tie-up of the USA security forces in Iraq not that long ago. In other words, you do not need a majority nor a large minority to take over a country. But if not governance, then lawless anarchy. If not upheaval, then mindless bloody violence. I ask the Liberals and the Socialists this. Would you let in freely men and women who are unapologetic fascists from, say, Germany into this country? And on their agenda was to have a coup and run this country with a one-party state? I would not be happy about it. I do not want to see people coming into this country whose philosophy is to dismantle democracy and law and fairness and tolerance and replace it with repression and misery and evil and rigid hierarchy. We have enough loonies of our own. What are we doing for the refugees who are unhinged and violent? Where are the psychiatric services to deal with them? Effectively, they are a ward of the state. Their craziness needs to be ironed out or contained. You don't think so, Liberal? You think let the low-income earners and welfare recipients suffer at the hands of these idiots? For the unhinged refugee will be pushed into these areas of residence. You assume I am anti-refugee. Wrong. Firstly, I will go to the countries that are the sources of refugees. All countries where people are under pressure due to politics or culture or sectarian or race or tribe. I go to get and find the refugees. I wouldn't wait for them to come to me. Note this, socialists. The poorest of refugees can get into Ireland in my system, unlike your evil system. Secondly, I would take in refugees before the violence would cause so much harm to them, physically or psychologically. To let people suffer due to war and rot in camps is evil. Then the refugee industry in Ireland applauds itself for letting a few traumatised and many seriously mentally damaged people. You people make me sick. Thirdly, I would take in way more a number than you lot. Fourthly, again, I would discriminate. For example, I wouldn't want ISIS loonies and their supporters in this country, but the minorities they wanted to tear apart, including activist Muslims who believe in tolerance and fair application of the law. Fifthly, my processing will be far more expeditious than you. I want my refugees' papers sorted out quickly and integrated in our country and full access to education and work. I want them to be able to politically organise to help set up alternatives that act as a springboard for political and cultural reform in the countries of origin. Sixthly, I believe with UN help there should be one city under UN control in every country that is based on democracy and tolerance and standards and a universal currency and financial system. This system and culture being immutable and cannot be removed by number or vote, only by force. In other words, every country has one sanctuary of respite. Let's envisage my system in one city on this island. You would have a number of refugees that is double those in the rest of the state using the present system. You would have the mother of young children who was repeatedly raped in a refugee camp now residing in this Irish city, being afforded every opportunity, who takes a day trip to Dublin, coming face to face with our gang rapists who are refugees in the capital. The rapists supported by the charities and the politicians and the political ideologies and the money-grubbing liars. Said to her your liberalism and version of socialism. You know who suffers the most from the unhinged lunatic refugees? It's not the indigenous Irish. No, it's other refugees, whether that's in hostels or camps or estates or on the streets or in religious buildings or cultural buildings. But the Liberals will coldly excuse that away. The genuine refugees left countries that escaped the unhinged, and now they must face them again on the streets of Ireland. I agree with those who say all cultures cannot be equated. Otherwise, is Nazism, which was a culture, equal to Western democratic culture? Just because a culture and its practices are ancient, again doesn't give it equality or validity. Otherwise, do we continue slavery and child marriage, paedophilia, and misogynistic practices in terms of education and clothing and property rights? Think about this. Would you be happy if a significant movement was trying to live the culture of conservative 30s Ireland today and impose it on their children and influence broader society? There would be a massive fight back against it. There cannot be a contradiction in your philosophy. If there is, then prejudice holds sway and not logic. You are capricious and not fair. Now imagine a worldwide network independent of the state and political chicanery, made up of genuine refugees with allies, collating information of all the criminals, be that in the arena of political or criminal or individuals or judicial, who did to these refugees and to the dead and the infirmed and the forgotten and the left behind so much damage. Now that mother in my example has the information and backup and hopefully the sanctuary city's police force to confront these rapists if they had the audacity to turn up. No, the gang rapists wouldn't turn up. Instead, they would be the poster boys and feted by the liberal laddie back in Dublin. The Liberals are not pro-refugee. They are a pro-Reihan idea. A Reihan idea that is anti-refugee. Thank you and consider subscribing.